Just waiting until somebody comes in. Or I might just start and then people come join. So, Earth's rotation. Because in the globe model, Earth is rotating, right? In the globe model, everything is inverted. In the heliocentric model, it's the Earth that is revolving around the Sun and the Earth that is rotating, and everything else is fixed more or less. The stars are fixed, the Sun is fixed. When the way we actually perceive reality is this way, we look at the night sky or we look at the day sky, doesn't matter, the stars, the moon, the sun, everything moves above our heads, while Earth is pretty stable. And then the way they are justifying Earth's rotation, they usually refer to that pendulum, which is called Foucault's pendulum, because Foucault apparently was a scientist a few hundred years ago. And honestly, that pendulum cannot prove any rotation of Earth. Maybe in theory it were possible, but in practice it's not possible. And one thing about that is that they justify why we cannot feel anything about that rotation of Earth. One way they justify this is to say, well, it's just like you're sitting in a train, right? And in a train, all the air is moving with the train, and if the train has a constant speed, everything seems normal. You wouldn't know that the train is moving if we would say it's a perfect train track, and you wouldn't even hear any sound. You wouldn't be able to look out the window. Then the train would still be moving at constant speed, but inside the train you wouldn't feel it. And they justify that, or they use that to justify why such a supposed ball Earth rotation is not feelable. We don't feel anything of such a rotation. Ball Earth is supposed to rotate, and we don't feel anything about that. There is basically no proof of any rotation that we could observe from Earth, right? And the way they justify this is through saying, okay, it's just like a train. You're sitting in a train that has a constant speed, and air is traveling inside that train with you, and so everything feels normal. You can look, or you can't look out the window, let's say, windows are closed, you don't hear any sound, and the train goes on a straight line forward with a constant speed. You wouldn't know that you're moving, right? And that's what they're using to justify Earth's rotation. At the same time, they are using a pendulum within air, trying to justify a ball rotation, that the pendulum moves differently than the Earth. You see, there is already a huge contradiction. So they are trying to, in one case, oh, that would suit the Earth, right? Earth's rotation, you're sitting in a train, Earth's rotation is supposed to be constant, you don't feel it. At the same time, they are trying to prove Earth's rotation with an experiment that, according to the first theory, isn't even possible. You see, you have a pendulum that's with an air. It wouldn't matter how the Earth is moving if we consider the Earth to be like a train that goes with constant speed somewhere. You wouldn't feel anything. You can put a pendulum inside the train anywhere you want. Nothing changes, because all of the air masses are moving with you. And that's how they justify why we don't feel any Earth rotation. On Earth, being on Earth, standing on that thing that is supposed to be turning and rotating and moving, and we don't feel anything. That's what they're saying. And they constantly refer to that train example. You're sitting in a train with constant speed and you don't feel anything happening. You can jump, whatever. You don't feel anything. But the difference between a train and the Earth is, for example, that a train has walls and is a rectangular object. You see, Earth doesn't really have walls, it's just the air around the ball. So if the ball were moving, it doesn't mean that the whole air is moving as well, because there aren't really walls that would push the air forward. Just like with a train, you're sitting in a train and the train goes with constant speed, the air comes with it because there are walls in the back that push the air forward, right? But in a train, on a ball Earth, you wouldn't have that. The ball Earth could be rotating, but the air, thanks to inertia, would just stay where it is. It would not rotate with the whole ball, because there aren't walls at some point within the Earth that block this whole layer of atmosphere, or this whole layer of air on one point, and then it would drag the whole air around. That's not what's happening. And also, a train goes in a straight line forward. But an Earth that is rotating is constantly changing its direction. The directional force of moving forward is constantly dipping down, dipping down, dipping down, going forward, dipping down, going forward, dipping down. That's a rotation, okay? And that causes centrifugal forces that they never actually account for somehow. You know, as if they wouldn't exist, but in practical science, centrifugal forces do exist. And there's also, again, a difference between a train that is moving with constant speed completely forward into one direction, and that's why you don't feel any changes within the train, and then a ball Earth that is supposed to rotate. The forces are completely different because the direction is constantly changing. Okay, and then again, if you have a layer of air around such a ball, the ball within that air can rotate without even touching the air that much that it would drag the whole air along, like in a train, because a train has fixed walls. It's a fixed container with walls, and the air is just being pushed by the wall forward with this whole container that is moving with constant speed. But with a ball Earth, you don't have these walls somewhere in the middle of the air that would push all the air along that ball, okay? And the way you can compare this is very simple. When you, for example, have a cup of water and you put, I don't know, you put herbs inside, and then you just turn the cup, you will see that the herbs, because of inertia, stay in the same spot. Okay, and there's just a little bit of friction going on, but they basically, because of inertia, stay in the very same spot. Although the whole cup is turning, you're holding the cup from below, you're turning the cup, but thanks to inertia, the herbs inside that water that are floating inside the water are basically staying where they are, and the water doesn't rotate, okay, if you're doing it right. All this because of inertia. And the same with a ball Earth. If the Earth is turning, there might be a little bit of friction together with the air, but only on ground level, and that will cause a lot of winds. But just a few kilometers up in the air, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, the air would just stay there where it is, thanks to inertia. And then the ball would just be rotating underneath it. Because there are no walls stuck inside the ball earth that would push the air forward. And only then you could compare Earth's rotation to a train that goes with a constant speed into one direction. Only then you could almost compare it. But then again, you have a train that goes straight forward into one direction, doesn't change its direction, but an Earth that is rotating, the direction is constantly changing. You're standing, for example, on Earth, you're not going actually straight forward, you're always going down a little bit. Forward and down, forward, down, forward, down. That's a constant change of rotation, change of direction during a rotation. And that causes centrifugal forces. Okay? So there is not really a proof for Earth's rotation. And again, they're saying, oh, we don't feel anything about that rotation because we're just like sitting in a train that is moving with constant speeds. And you can move inside a train, you wouldn't feel that you're moving, right? You wouldn't feel that the whole container of that train or this whole wagon is moving. All the air is being dragged along. You can start a drone inside of a train and it would stay in position. It would not fly against the wall. So they use this to justify why we're not feeling any rotation on Earth. However, their only proof of Earth's rotation that they always go back to is that experiment from 100 years ago. It's called Foucault's pendulum, that is happening inside the air that is supposed to be just moving along with Earth. Okay? Like as if we're on a train. So why would that pendulum all of a sudden change in those physics, in this theory, but inside of a train it wouldn't? Okay, the train doesn't move, the train doesn't rotate, but we're saying that air is being dragged along because of constant speed. Okay, or they are saying that, and that air creates that feeling of everything is being normal, or everything is normal there. Inside the train you can move, you can jump, you can, I don't know, create a paper plane and let it fly there, while that train is moving forward with a speed of maybe 100 kilometers per hour, or what are usual trains, 80 kilometers per hour. So all the air is being dragged along, but why? Because a train has walls. Okay, so when the train accelerates, all the air actually is pushing onto the back wall. It's slightly pushing onto the back wall. Okay, the air inside that container is pushing onto the back wall of the container, and then once the train reaches constant speed, of course everything is being equalized again. The air is basically staying stable there because we already have a constant speed there. So you would not feel anything, any change or anything, okay, within that container. So they take that concept and transpose it to a ball earth that is, first of all, constantly changing its direction if it's rotating. And you know, a train is just going into one direction straight forward, but a rotation, that's what a rotation is, constantly changing its direction towards the center point, and it creates centrifugal forces that go away from the center. Secondly, Earth does not have walls like a container that would actually put pressure onto that layer of air and drag it along, okay, like a train does. So, because of inertia, and that's a physical law, that is true, because of inertia, air would actually basically stay in one place, and an Earth that is rotating would just be rotating without dragging along that whole layer of air. There might be a little bit of friction, but it would, the higher you go in altitude, the less this friction would have power on that layer of air, and the air would just, because of inertia, stay where it is, although underneath it something is rotating. And the way you can compare this is to a cup of water that you're holding in your hand, and you put herbs inside, and those herbs are floating in the water, everything's still. Now you're rotating the cup, okay, not like, okay, then the water comes out, but in a direction that is what is it called, not vertically, horizontally, okay. So you're turning that cup, and you will see that thanks to inertia all the herbs staying in one place although the whole cup is rotating. Okay, and you can take that concept and just turn it around, say something is in the middle of the water, rotating, and it's a ball, and you're rotating that ball. The water surrounding that ball would just stay because of inertia the way it is. And only at the surface of the ball, because of friction, a little bit of water might be dragged along. But the further you go away from the ball, there is inertia inside the water that would make the water just stay where it is. And objects inside the water, if the water is not moving, will just stay where they are. And if these objects are also not moving, just like herbs inside of a water, inside of a cup of water. And again, something can rotate, but because of inertia, the water stays as it is. Something can rotate, but the air around it might stay untouched. Just a little bit of friction at the surface of that rotating object, but the further you go away from that object, there is inertia. Okay? And so, where is this? How is this happening? Or take a helicopter, take it into the sky, let it face one direction, and stabilize it, and then let, I don't know, half an hour pass, 1 hour, 3 hours, 6 hours pass. I don't know how long helicopters can stay in the air because of fuel, but let 6 hours pass. That helicopter, according to their theory, should have changed its nose, the direction of its nose, because of rotation. And that's also basically the pendulum experiment that they are using to explain Earth's rotation in a nutshell. It's basically the same thing that they're saying, oh, the pendulum has inertia, it goes back and forth, it's fixed on one point in the ceiling of a construction of a room, and then it just has inertia, it keeps that inertia while something underneath it is rotating. The floor on which over which it hangs is rotating. So that would be the same as if you put a helicopter into the air and you stabilize the nose into one direction, and then after 6 hours that nose should be pointing into another direction. Let's take 12 hours as an example, theoretic example. It should face away from the point 180 degrees. Okay, from the first point you chose in space, the nose should be pointing away from that point 180 degrees. Okay, or I have to turn it around actually. The Earth underneath should have been rotating 180 degrees in relation to that nose of the helicopter. So for example, you're facing north when you're starting. You're in Europe, you have a helicopter, you're facing north. Now, 12 hours later, you've rotated halfway through together with the layer of air. Okay? Now the nose should face away from the nose of your helicopter should face away from north because of inertia. If people can do this, then they have successfully proven Earth's rotation, but of course it's not possible because Earth does not rotate. Okay? And then they would say, well, it's not possible. It's not possible, it's not possible that the nose of the helicopter will change its pointing direction away from north after 12 hours because we're like inside of a train with air, filled with air that goes with constant speed into one direction. But they don't understand that you cannot compare a constant moving train that goes into one direction with a rotating ball Earth. You cannot compare that because there are no walls on a rotating Earth that push the air forward with it. Secondly, the direction is constantly changing on a rotating ball. You're going forward, down, forward, down, forward, down. That's a change in direction. It creates forces that people know under the term centrifugal forces. And then they say, well, Earth's too big to feel anything. Earth's too big. They will just come up with all kinds of excuses just to hold on to this ball Earth lie, like, I don't know, like dogs hold on to puppets when they grow up. Ever seen these dogs that are grown and they hold on to these puppets, like they carry them around because they can't let them go? It's very similar to how people can't let go of a ball Earth and just face reality for what it is. That the Earth is flat and all the physics align with that. But all the physics don't align with a ball theory, as I explained. Because of inertia, the air wouldn't be dragged along with the Earth. The Earth can rotate all at once. Okay, there might be a little bit of friction happening really at the surface where we're standing on the ground. That would actually cause winds. But any higher you go in altitude, let's say if you're 10 kilometers up in the air, because of inertia, the air, that layer, in that altitude would just stay where it is, untouched by the rotation underneath of some Earth. Okay, you can rewatch this whole video if you want to understand the whole explanation. If you just checked in recently, it might make more sense. And well, that's about it. There was never actually a proof of any rotation, any Earth rotation. There's a lot of proof that Earth does not have a south pole, but it's actually a south and ice wall um, that contains all the water masses and or that keeps all the water masses from just floating away. And that's about it.